Welcome back to the Unstuck movement, true testimonies of breakthrough. I am your host, Rob Z. Glad to have you here today and super honored to have Keith Ellis in the house, the #1 superpower coach in the world. Keith, I love to dive in with powerful questions right off the jump so we can get right to the heart of the matter. You talk about having superpowers and doing the impossible. So I'm very curious about this answer. Being a coach myself, I'm excited to see what you have to say here. Why are impossible goals often easier to achieve than ordinary goals?
Oh, love that question. So it's what I call the impossibility effect. What happens when you think something's impossible? You think you're making some kind of statement about the physical universe. You're not. We're not talking about going faster than the speed of light or being in two places at the same time. What we're talking about really is how you think about yourself. And what you're really saying when you say something is impossible is, I can't do it. It's beyond my capabilities. It is just out there. So what I do is two things. One, I say, okay, what if you added to your capabilities? And it's great to be in a coaching session with somebody and ask them that, because they suddenly realize, wait a minute, I just said I'm not capable of this. What if I were capable of it? And then now they start thinking about that, right? And then when they commit to what they think is an impossible goal, their brain immediately starts trying to make it happen, because the brain up to this point, because we say, oh, that's impossible. Yeah, I'd like to ask that girl out, or I'd like to take my revenue by a factor of 10, grow it by a factor of 10, or I'd like to be super healthy. Any of these things, they're impossible for me. And then your brain goes, okay, well, we won't waste any energy on that one then. But the minute you commit to it, and I mean really commit to it, even though you think it's impossible, your brain goes, oh, okay, let's see how we can make this happen. And then suddenly the clarity of your vision enables all sorts of cool things. So what makes it easier is that most of us are trapped in the 80-20 model, the Pareto's principle. We spend most of our time, 80% of our time, doing stuff that produces 20% of our results. So we waste most of our time. That's just life in the modern world we have here, right? I guess it's always been that way. And what committing to an impossible goal does is it gets rid of the 80%, because that's not going to work anymore. That crap that you're doing now can't make this profound change that you've just committed to. So you just discard it. And now you're focused on just the 20%, the sweet spot. And the clarity is absolutely amazing. When somebody gets this and commits to an impossible goal, suddenly they aren't wasting time thinking about all this other stuff. They're focused only on what will get them what they want. And it changes their life on the spot.
Loving this conversation already. I knew this was going to be fun, and it already is fun. And, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because when we ask ourselves a question, or we see a question, your brain can't help but not answer it, right? So asking yourself the right questions, asking yourself better questions is going to lead to better answers in your life, which is going to lead to the life that you want to have. So it's so important, and it's really interesting and I've just grasping a hold of that idea for me was huge of when I see a question, when I ask myself a question, I can't help but answer it, so I can't help draw myself towards that conclusion. So it's just amazing in itself, how fundamentally simple and practical that is. Before we go any further, I just want to welcome people here. This platform, the Unstuck movement, was created so that the listeners today, watching or listening, could find breakthrough in your life, right? Because if we can find examples from other people, then people who are successful and who've had breakthroughs leave breadcrumbs that will help you lead to the success, the unstuckness, the movement you need to have in your life. So I want to help you break the chains that have been holding you back. We're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. Over 400 heart-centered entrepreneur leaders from all over the world. And also, I just want to remind everybody before we dive in real quick, if you want to become the go-to authority in your field, the expert at what you do, and have incredible connections, incredible people come into your life, I would love to help you create this lasting impact through the Pro Podcaster Academy. You can join the waitlist for that right now at robzwentz.com. Today with us is Keith Ellis, a best-selling author and superpower coach. He helps entrepreneurs achieve impossible goals. As VP of Sales at webMethods, he played a pivotal role in its historic software IPO also. But I'm curious, Keith, as we talk about these impossible goals, what was the impossible goal for you that made you realize it's easier to reach for impossible goals than ordinary ones?
Well, I wrote a book about goal setting about 30 years ago now. It's called The Magic Lamp: Goal Setting for People Who Hate Setting Goals. And I wrote it because I'm a success junkie. I've spent my life trying to learn from the masters about how to succeed, how to get the right attitude, how to create energy in your life, how to help other people. And I got to a point in my life where I wanted more. And I realized I needed to set goals. Now, this sounds crazy because goal setting is sort of the heart of all success theories, right? But I didn't do it. At least I didn't do it formally because I was uncomfortable with it. It was like it stripped all the spontaneity out of my life. And I was literally in the shower one day after a workout. And I think I'd just seen the movie Aladdin or something. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if setting goals was like making a wish come true? You just rubbed a lamp and poof, it happened. Wouldn't that be cool? And I realized it was like I was struck by lightning. I was so excited. I almost slipped in a bar of soap. I jumped out of the shower, dripping wet. And I always had a pad. I still always have a pad of paper and a pen, whatever I'm doing. And I started writing down this framework that I called the LAMP framework, the LAMP process, that essentially identified how goal setting could be exactly like making your wishes come true, with one difference: you are your own genie. And there's a really good thing about that, being your own genie. The reason people are fascinated with magic lamps and genies and stuff is because the genie does all the work, right? But that essentially deprives you of the growth that you get by adding capabilities, by becoming the kind of person who can achieve something, because that's the real reward. When you set a goal, whatever the goal is, in terms of sales or in terms of business success or relationship success, whatever it is, whatever the goal is, that's great. But what really matters is that you've become the person who can achieve that goal. So that was that book. That book was really successful, translated into a bunch of languages, sold tens of thousands of copies around the world, and of course in the United States. But I got to a point that you would describe as, wait for it, stuck. I was doing what I preached in my book. I was making incremental progress in my life. And I wanted more than that. I didn't want incremental anymore. I wanted extraordinary. And I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to get unstuck. So I plunged back into researching all these things that I'd studied, these systems of thought, from Socrates to Tony Robbins to Dan Sullivan, all kinds of other people, and tried to figure out, what am I missing here, right? And I realized, this is another thing that's right up your alley, I think. What I was missing was a certain type of question. Every success system I could find, every single one, they all were based on a certain type of question. And the question was so powerful that I began to think of it as magic questions. And I even ended up copywriting that or trademarking that phrase, magic questions. And I created this process to make it easy to ask a magic question in the right way at the right time, every time. And nobody else calls these questions magic questions. That's okay. Doesn't matter. But they're at the heart of what anybody teaches when they're teaching success. So I wrote another book called Magic Questions. And that was great. That was successful. It changed my life, helped me get unstuck, which is phenomenal. And part of the research for that book was to try to figure out, why are questions so powerful? What you said earlier about questions, that questions make it hard for you. Yeah, you can't resist a question. The mind is set up so if you're asked a question, you have to answer it. Even if you resist it, your brain kind of goes subterranean and says, okay, we'll get back to this. And then suddenly the answer pops out. And so what I realized is that questions, because of this thing you identified, there is the irresistibility of questions. Questions are the most powerful tool on the planet to get you unstuck because they help you choose what to think about. We get stuck because we can't get out of thinking the same thing. We're emotionally distraught. We're frustrated. We're angry, whatever it is. We're in this nasty place, right? We don't want to be in this nasty place, but we're stuck. And what questions do is they give you a way to get unstuck by asking a different question. And your brain goes, oh, okay, look at the kitty, you know, it's the way the brain works. And suddenly you're thinking about something different and you can't feel the same feelings you were feeling before. You can't feel the same stuckness that you were feeling before. So that's how I got out of the stuckness. And that led me to the next step, which was this idea that I had this goal setting piece, I had this magic questions piece. And then what I found out was what's missing is this impossible piece, this idea that the way to clarify your thinking, really clarify your thinking, is to focus on what you think is impossible and commit to it. Something you want enough, right? You have to be willing to commit to it. I'm not saying focus on anything that's impossible. I'm saying if there's something you really want in your life and you think it's impossible, but you really want it, commit to it. And suddenly your life becomes crystal clear. That was the breakthrough moment for me. And that became my latest book.
I love that. Yeah, because becoming crystal clear is the goal. Like it has to be crystal clear to you for you to be able to go after it and to achieve it. And so many times the things that are crystal clear to us are the things that we're worrying about or what could go wrong, right? Because those things, we worry. Most people worry more than they don't worry. So they're looking at everything through a lens of, boy, I really don't want that to happen, which is like creating the thing, creating it to happen.
Right.
When you said about, and I'm not sure if you quite answered this, but you said about magic questions. How do you ask a magic question at the right time every time?
So there's what I call the magic model, and I can go through it very simply if you want me to here. There's some characteristics. And it's about how you ask a question. The first thing to remember about a magic question is that you're asking an open-ended question, not a closed-ended question. Yes or no questions can be very useful. Like, you know, do I go to this college or not? You know, do I take this job or not? Very useful, but they aren't magic. Magic questions are, what job should I be considering? What college should I be thinking about? What degree program should I be interested in? What business should I start? Those are questions that are open-ended, and they invite your brain to start thinking, to start coming up with ideas, which is something that everybody's brain is capable of. Not everybody believes that. Some people think they have no imagination. And whenever anybody says that to me, I always say that's an active imagination. You've actually imagined that. You've created that as a reality, and you can create another reality just as easily because guess what? You have imagination. So the first thing is to remember that a magic question has to be an open-ended question. The second thing is you have to ask it out loud. You actually have to hear it. Your brain works differently when it's going through the auditory mechanism than it does if you stay internal. So you ask it out loud, and then a piece of that is stand up, get your whole body into it. Your question, the answers you get from your questions will change if you're standing up when you ask them. No, that sounds crazy. But there's a huge amount of research that links how the body influences the mind and vice versa, how they're constantly, transmitting information back and forth. And one way is simply to move, to change your posture, and it changes your emotions, changes your thinking. So you do those things. The other thing to remember is to, what I say is put yourself in the question. The question should always include an I or a me or a my. Most teachers, when they're teaching, say, okay, Rob, what would you do about this? And you hear the question, okay, what would you do about? Now you're asking yourself, what would you do about this? That's essentially a step removed from being, the person behind the wheel. Right. So when you hear a question like that, if you think it's a useful question, translate it into something that turns into I. So if I said, Rob, how would you approach this situation? What you would do is, Rob, how would I approach this situation? And now you're the person who's driving the bus. You're the person who's answering the question for yourself. That's a really important characteristic. Most of the questions we ask on a given day, we ask of other people. At magic questions, we ask of ourselves. And that's a really critical distinction. And then the last piece of it is you need to grant yourself permission to listen to your answers. People have these amazing blind spots, and they ask themselves a question, and they won't even entertain things that they think are impossible, since we were talking about impossible. They won't even entertain things that they don't believe are realistic in their mind. So you say, where would you like to go for dinner? Oh, I don't know. I don't care. Right? What they're thinking about is their favorite restaurant that's, 30 miles away and it's expensive. That's out of the question. They don't really want to go there. But that wasn't the question. The question is, where would you like to go for dinner? And you have to find a way to let yourself listen to yourself. Listening to yourself is a life-changing skill, and most of us don't get it. Most of us never learn it. And if you don't listen to yourself, who else is going to, right? Why would they? So you grant yourself permission to listen to all your answers, even the stupid ones, even the impossible ones, especially the impossible ones. And then you capture them. You write them down. It's not real unless you're writing it down. And you can capture it on an electronic device. You can type it into a computer, or, I use voice dictation constantly on my phones, my watch, my computer, whatever is easiest for you. But capture your ideas. And then once you've done all this thing with a question, you have a bunch of ammunition that your brain came up with. Your brain's giving you these gifts. And then you can say, oh, I like that. I hadn't been thinking about that. That's perfect. So that's how you ask what I say is the right question in the right way at the right time. That's a magic question.
I love that. It sounds, a portion of that sounds a lot like QBQ, the question behind the question. Have you ever heard of that book?
I have. Yep.
But that's where I learned a lot of this is, when we ask ourselves better questions, and the questions, they do not involve why did this happen to me, right? It's what can I do about it? How can I change this? And put yourself in it. It's you, it's I, and an action attached to it.
Yep.
And that will change so much.
It changes so much. And I get asked a lot because I'm in the question business, right? I get asked, what's your favorite question? And I don't have a favorite question. There are lots of questions, but the thing that pops into my mind whenever anybody asks me that, and the answer I give them is, what am I going to do about it? Because it doesn't matter what happens to you in life. It happens. It's out there. It's done, right?
Yeah.
But the only thing that matters at that moment is, what am I going to do about it? And if you learn, and that's a magic question. It's open-ended. I'm in the question. If I'm willing to listen to myself, and then ask it out loud and capture the answers, then I've really got something there. It's an incredibly powerful question. So
it's really good information too, Keith, because saying it out loud, I never used to understand this. I never used to understand why is it different me saying something out loud than just keeping it in my head. And it's just like any thought that you have. Throughout your life, you have so many what you think are really good ideas in your head. Oh, in my head, this is like amazing. This idea is amazing. Then you start to say it out loud and you're like, wait a minute. I don't even know what I'm talking about. This doesn't make any sense, right? It's like, because from your brain skips steps. When you're thinking, you skip all of these steps and kind of put patterns together that are like, it's like when you think about something, the pattern is there in pieces. But when you say it out loud, now you have to fully form it and fill in all the nooks and crannies. So saying it out loud is so important. And I love that, because I don't think I've had anybody on the podcast actually say that yet. And that is such a crucial part of this, that speaking things is the key. You have to speak them, and especially things to yourself. And you got to talk to yourself, right? We're talking to ourselves anyways inside of our own head. Why not do it out loud?
Yep, exactly. That's exactly the way to do it.
So I want to ask, we're going to jump into shout out to the sponsors real quick for the podcast. When we come back, though, I want to find out, where do you do this? When do you do this? Do you sit down in the morning? Do you sit down in the evening? Do you give it a special spot in your house? Or what is your practical daily routine for making this happen in your life? We'll cover that when we come back. Are you struggling to make consistent, valuable content for yourself? Do you want to have an efficient and effective way to create content that attracts the people that you want to connect with in life, the people you want to build relationships with in business? Do you want to be the go-to authority at what you do, at what you're great at? Would it be helpful for you if you had a platform that connects you to incredible people in your industry? The kind of platform that gets you leads and lands you clients without you having to beat down anybody's door or blow up anybody's inbox. Whether you're already creating content or you're desiring to start and it's something that's been kind of burning inside of you for a while, I urge you and encourage you to check out the Pro Podcaster Academy. Get started right now. Join the waitlist at robzwentz.com.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world globally. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, join the Connected Leaders Academy today. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So welcome back, Keith. I just want to let you know, while we were in that break, I looked up the magic lamp, and I'm going to get a copy of that today. I'm excited. That's
cool.
Awesome. I can't wait to read that. And I'm curious, your practical life, personal life, what does this look like for you? Sitting down and going through this process? Do you do it on the fly everywhere you are? Do you have time you spend with yourself throughout the day? What's that look like?
So I went through a process. It takes longer to go through to explain the process than it does to do it. You get used to it and you start doing it. Like what you just said, a question that popped out from you a minute ago was, what am I going to do about it? Right? I ask myself that 50 times a day. Something will happen that I'm not expecting, or I'm in a bad mood. I'm stuck emotionally for some reason, right? Something just didn't go my way. And my stock question is, what am I going to do about it? It never gets old. You can use a question as many times as you want. And you do exactly what you said earlier. Your brain just immediately starts trying to answer it. So in terms of what I'm asking, I can be more formal with the process or less formal. So for example, generally, what am I going to do about it is not something I have to sit down and write my answers to, right? It's essentially me kicking myself in the butt saying, okay, this happened to you. What are you going to do? And that is all I need at that point. And then I kind of laugh about it and then go on to the next thing. So that's a very quick thing that happens constantly throughout the day. Other questions can be more formal depending on what I'm asking. So if I'm planning the quarter, right, for my business, that involves a series of magic questions. I also have to create an impossible goal. I have a tool called the Impossibility Finder. And it's a series of magic questions. There are 11 magic questions, and you just kind of ask it methodically. You write down your answers, and at the end of it, you have an idea of something that you think is impossible, but you really want it, and you're willing to commit to it. Or you're not. If you're not ready, then you go through it again. You can iterate this as often as you want. So there are. It all depends on how formal you want your response to be. But the key part of it is that you are in charge and you are using questions, magic questions, to deal with whatever the world is throwing at you, as well as to plan your future. It's all about magic questions.
So flipping it to people in your life, family, kids, friends, coworkers, we want people to do things that they're not doing. What's your strategy in that, asking them the right questions? When you flip it around to other people, how do you approach asking them questions to help them come to the answers that you want to have them come to without telling them what to do?
Wait a minute. Are you saying that not everybody in your life does everything you want them to do? Oh, that's bizarre.
No, I don't even do what I want to do.
I tell you exactly. That's exactly the way to think of it. So you can, from my point of view, you don't want to get into a lecture mode and say, well, here's how you should, here's how you should approach this. So in that case, it's perfectly fine to imagine a magic question that would be useful to them and simply ask it to them. But you ask it to them in the second person instead of the first person, right? So if you're talking to your teenage daughter, and as everybody knows, teenagers do everything they're told, and they're they're perfect. Yeah. But when you're talking to teenage daughter and anybody else, you could ask a question that would get their mind going in the direction you think would be useful, right? And it's so much more powerful, since you brought this up, it's so much more powerful than telling them what to do, right? And you can even throw in a choice, which is a neat little coda, sort of a way to end a question that you would ask somebody. If you're trying to get somebody to think about something a different way, you could say, okay, so how would you approach this? And they go, well, I do this and this and this, and say, okay, so how would you choose between those options, right? So you're getting their brain, or you're giving their brain an opportunity to start choosing and start thinking and start reasoning this stuff out. And it's very non-confrontational. And people often don't have any idea of what's happened. They just know that the conversation has, gone in a positive way and yielded some useful results.
So this is maybe a selfish question from my end of, when people in your life know that when you do coaching, and so they kind of know what this looks like a little bit, and they say to you, stop trying to coach me. I'm just like, I'm your wife, or I'm your friend. Quit going into coach mode. I just want to talk to you. But you can help them come to an answer. What do you do in spots like that? I'm curious.
Well, so yes, I've had people say that. It was earlier in my career because I would come on stronger. I was approaching it like I had all the answers, and you really don't have any answers for someone else.
Yeah.
You might, if you're lucky, have some questions that can help them find their own answers. Mm-hmm. So what I learned out of this, because even as I've been coaching people and training people through the years, I've learned tons of stuff, and I've grown tons, which is my primary objective. Really, it's my prime objective, to grow. Prime directive, you would call it, if you're a Star Trek fan. And what the way to sort of soften it is, well, first off, if you're talking about a spouse, and I have some experience with that, then my instinct is to try to solve somebody's problem. And often all that's necessary is for you to listen to the other person. And that's such a powerful thing. And I say spouse, but it can be kids, it can be spouse, it can be boss, it can be employee, it can be anybody. And they dump this thing on you. Mm-hmm. And your immediate reaction, at least my immediate reaction, is, okay, how do I get into my problem solving mode? And that's not what they're asking for. They're asking for somebody to listen to them. And if you've ever been really listened to, I call this skill deep listening. I teach that as well. If you've ever really been listened to, it's an amazing experience, and you come away from it refreshed and empowered without really understanding why. It just feels good.
You feel very important when somebody really listens to you. It gives you like a fuzzy feeling on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. And you haven't solved any problem. The other person hasn't solved any problems. They've just listened.
Yeah. We were talking about imagination earlier. I'm curious, how do you strengthen, and a lot of people, they need to reawaken their imagination, reawaken their creativity, because it's been dulled down so much throughout their life. Are there certain things that you do to reawaken that part of you?
Well, questions, again, the magic process that I described earlier, the magic questions, or the magic model is what I call it. It's a creativity exercise without being called that, right? Because if you say that to some people, they've told themselves they're not creative. I mean, the mind as we're growing up and learning what we're capable of doing in our lives, we're also learning what we think we're incapable of doing. Psychologists call it learned helplessness. And example I give is, you're in second grade and everybody's drawing pictures of cows and dogs and stuff like this, and your drawing sucks. So you look around at everybody else's and you think, I'm not creative, or I'm not an artist, or I have no skill. Now, kids especially, develop differently at different times. And if you hadn't been giving yourself this bad speak, if you will, you might have evolved into someone who can do these things better, or whatever it is you think you're not able to do. But what happens is we form a belief almost in the instant, I'm not creative. And then we repeat that when we confront a situation where creativity is necessary. Put your thinking caps on, kids. You go, I'm not creative. And you just tune out. You stop trying. And I don't buy into any of that crap. And I don't let anybody I'm coaching buy into that. I agree with them. I say, great, I understand you're not creative. Now, what's the answer to this question? And then they start coming up with all these answers. And then you look at a list of 10 answers they just wrote down. And then you ask them, where'd those come from? Who invented those?
Exactly.
Who, wait for it, created those, right? Yeah. After a little bit of that, they begin to realize that there's this part of themselves they haven't tapped into that's always been there. And they've probably been using it subconsciously. Probably wouldn't have gotten as far as they've gotten if they didn't use it subconsciously. And all I'm doing is giving them the tools, which are questions, for making this tool, this power, superpower, something they can control consciously. That's really what makes it a superpower. We have all this stuff built into us as human beings that we don't tap. And what makes it a superpower is when we realize, wow, I actually can control this. I can make this happen. And that's when it gets exciting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The things that are superpowers in your life are usually, they can be a gift or a curse, right? Anything that's really powerful for you. For me, example, sensitivity. Like I was very sensitive growing up, and that caused a lot of problems. Clearly, sensitivity can cause a lot of problems. But also, when I flip it around and I use it to my advantage, I can pick up on things that other people don't really pick up on. I notice things that other people don't notice, and what a power that is. And we have to be able to harness those things, but understand that they are superpowers, that they're gifts. Because they're sometimes that thing that we stand out for is something that somebody shunned in our life, but really they shunned it because they, for whatever, there could be a multitude of reasons why they shunned it. But one of those reasons might be they were jealous of it, or they had squelched that part inside of them that never let that superpower come out. So they unintentionally even do it to somebody else. When I was talking about creativity too, though, I'm curious because creativity often involves play, right? So to bring our creativity out, at least for me, I have to play. And I think that should be a part of our life. What do you do to be playful?
This is going to sound really dull, but just about everything I do is playful. I'm in this. One of the things I teach. That doesn't
sound dull at all. That sounds awesome.
Well, what I mean, but I'm doing stuff that a lot of people might think is dull. I got into computers years ago. I had an Atari machine, which is so far back, a lot of people don't remember the name even. But I had an Atari machine, and I loved playing games. And then I got into the business of selling computers because I was so fascinated with playing games. And once I started selling computers and using actual software to do actual work, I didn't play any games anymore because using a spreadsheet was more fun to me than playing a game. I know that's what I mean by dull. That sounds crazy, but to take my brain and essentially expand it by using some technology is just mind blowing to me. It is play. So I do that all day long, and I'm lucky enough to do that. And one of the things I teach, my new book is broken into 10 breakthroughs, and each breakthrough can change your life profoundly. You put them all together, and you have the 10X superpower, which is what the book is really about. It's how you create the impossible in your life. But one of the things I teach is how to find what I call your joy strength. What is it you are so good at that you enjoy it, and you enjoy it so much you're good at. In other words, it's a circle, right? Because people say, well, he's really good at that, so he enjoys it. Or he enjoys it, so he's really good at that. Which is it? It's both. The question is, what brings you joy? And by extension, what are you good at because it brings you joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are these things each of us has. If we're lucky, we get to use them. But luck means you have to make a decision to use them. So one of the things I do is coach entrepreneurs on figuring out what it is that they bring to the table that brings them joy and they're really good at. And that's probably where they should be spending most of their time. And what I find is that they're probably spending almost no time doing that because they've created a successful business and now they're managing the business. But the stuff that's on their desk, payrolls and strategy sessions and all the things that they have to do, hiring and firing decisions, none of that is what they signed up for. It's not why they started their business, but that's what they do because they're running the business. And what I do is teach them how to focus on what they love doing and find somebody else to do the things that they don't love doing. And that's the secret sauce for impossible growth, what I call 10x growth in a business. You can literally set a goal and say, I want 10x more in my business. I want 10 times more customers. I want 10 times more revenue. You define it and achieve it if you follow this framework.
I love that so much, Keith. It's so good. And I talk about this a lot too, because often in life we end up doing something that we're good at, but it drains us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So a lot of people do things they're good at, but that every day they don't even want to do it anymore because it doesn't bring them joy. And joy is the goal. Like, I want to be joyful when I'm doing things. It's one of the reasons I started doing this podcast. I spent 20 years in radio broadcasting. I love broadcasting. It's just something I love to do. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't doing it for a while. For several years, I was not doing a podcast. I wasn't on the radio. I wasn't doing this, making content. And I was like dying inside. And I was trying to figure out why, like, things are going well. Why am I not feeling happy? Why am I not like excited to do what I'm doing? And it was bringing this element back into my life. And I'm curious what you think about this. So a question I always ask people is, what did you want to be whenever you were 10 years old? Because to me, that is a sweet spot of a question. You were old enough to just love something for no reason. It's just because you loved it. And you were young enough, the world hadn't beaten that creativity out of you. And that to me is like that joyful, something you're really good at and you're joyful doing it because you just naturally love it. What was that thing for you when you were 10? What did you love to do? Well,
so I'm going to answer this in a larger framework because it really gets to the heart of what we're talking about here. I actually refer to this when I'm coaching people. We have, as we're growing up, we have a much more unfiltered view of the world. So if you say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Kids will go, oh, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a ballerina. I want to be an insurance salesman. Okay. Nobody says that. But they'll say
somebody does. Somebody might, but
somebody might. That's right.
A kid out there.
So kids are just very spontaneous because they don't have all these rules and crap in their brain. They haven't learned what they can't do yet. They haven't learned the helplessness part of it. So that's really the question you're asking, or I'm saying, I should say that's the question I'm hearing when you ask me that. It's what when you had unbridled enthusiasm, what did you love doing? And this will sound really crazy because this is about when I came to this decision. I wanted to be in politics. I was absolutely convinced I was going to be president of the United States, which sounds a whole lot like somebody with a Messiah complex. But it turns out I was just fascinated with politics, fascinated with history, and that seemed to be the logical choice. The more I learned about how I like to spend my time, the more I realized that was the last place I wanted to be. In politics. And that just sort of happened organically. That's a whole nother story. But I was very, very clear. I had it written on my desk. I had one of those little dressers by my, and I had one of those little machines that printed out signs, and I had it taped to my desk. President Keith Ellis, President of the United States. It was a done deal. And that was cool until I realized I don't want to do that. that takes me in all these places I don't want to be. And it took a while to get there, but it did get there. But it was interesting because a lot of the components of that have become part of my life. I love podcasting. I mean, I'm not a podcaster. I love guesting with someone who asks intelligent questions, is a good listener. It's just a ball to me. It's sheer joy. I love being in dyadic situations, conversations with people where we're just giving and taking, and it's just fun. I just love it. We're riffing off each other.
And that's the thing, right? Because the thing that you wanted to do when you were 10, it might not make sense now. You might not be doing it, but when you pull out the components of it, like
Exactly.
what were the elements of that, then you're like, oh, like I asked a woman this a little while ago, and she said she wanted to be a paleontologist, and now she was a wellness, like massage therapist and things of that nature. And she pulled out like, well, what was it about paleontology? It was the mystery of like uncovering a mystery, solving some sort of like ancient puzzle, right? So
Yep.
it's like helping, and now she does that for people. She helps them solve these things about themselves. So pretty cool that you can find the patterns in there. We have to wrap this thing up. This has been a great conversation. I've loved this. I want to invite everybody to go to your website to take the impossible quiz. So go to keithellis.com, and they go there. They can take the impossible quiz. What can they expect when they take that?
Well, so not everybody's ready to commit to the impossible. I've been kind of glib about this, saying, you choose something impossible and you commit to it. Probably 1 in 100 people is actually ready for that. Because what happens is people get, and we haven't talked about this, and maybe that's for another show, but people get into a comfort zone, and they are happy to be where they are. They might bitch and moan about this or that and the other, but they're happy to be where they are. They're content. And that's fine. I can't help people like that. I certainly don't want to make them discontent, right? I don't want to make them unhappy. But if somebody has something burning inside, if they reach the point of life like I did, where I'd had some success, but I didn't want incremental success anymore. I wanted extraordinary success. If somebody reaches that point, then I can help them. So this quiz, takes 5 minutes. It just asks you some questions about yourself. And depending on your answer, you'll either get an invite from me saying, hey, do you want to book a call where we can have an actual coaching call? And you can see if you want to work with me, and I can see if I want to work with you, because that's important to me as well. Or you'll get something that says, hey, you're so close, but you're not quite there. But here's an excerpt from my new book, which is itself pretty cool. So, that kind of thing. But it's a fun little quiz. That's what they can get at KeithEllis.com.
Awesome. So check that out, KeithEllis.com. And also, just a reminder, if you want to be the authority in your space, launch your platform, join the wait list for the Pro Podcaster Academy at robzwentz.com. Keith, this has been an awesome conversation. I've loved this. Anything that you want to include, we left out, that you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
We don't have 4 or 5 more hours to do this. I wish we did. No, this was delightful. I love the vibe, and you are a natural. It's very clear you came out of the broadcasting world, and are expressing your joy strength here, because it's a very comfortable conversation with you. And like you, I've been on a lot of these, and they aren't always that way. So
yeah, I can agree. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, Keith. I really appreciate that. This has been another true testimony of breakthrough. Until next time, this has been the Unstuck Movement. All right, we're clear.